The night over Aurelion Prime tears like heated glass under a blade. No thunder, no warning. A seam opens across the sky in a slow, luminous wound the length of a continent, and light pours through as if a second sun has been cut into the firmament. Vox towers stutter. Cathedral spires flash white across their gilded bones. In the slagged plazas of Crownspire Hive, pilgrims drop to their knees and scribe the double-headed sign across their chests with trembling hands. Something falls from the seam. Small, deliberate. A seed of fire kicked from the teeth of heaven. Orbital defense platforms pivot with the groan of ancient servos. Targeting arrays lock with clinical pings. Sirens claw their way up the hive's throat and hold there, a knife edge of sound that makes steel vibrate. The falling object hits the upper atmosphere and slows without breaking apart. The fire peels backward from it in clean petals. Heat haze drags behind like silk. Inside the command spire of Crownspire, panes of diamond glass ripple with pressure. Admiral Lysa Kade stands in the blue of tactical holos, jaw clenched, gray hair tied back, eyes reflecting the red descent rune that blooms over the city. She has buried 2 worlds. She hates omens. Identify, she says, voice even. Trajectory Crownspire core. Killbox Omega if hostile. A choir of servitors hisses the same answer in different registers. Unidentified. No IFF. Mass anomalously low for the thermal signature it's producing. The Admiral's staff turns to her. They are good. They are scared. Hold fire, Kade says. Not yet. On the far side of the chamber, black-robed and unhelmed, the man who does not stand at attention watches the same falling star with the steady calm of someone who has outlived his own fear. Inquisitor Severin Holt carries the sigil of a rosette that can unmake commanders. He does not bother to wield it. His eyes are dark stone. If it is a demon, hesitation damns us, Holt says. If it is hope, Kade says, I will not shoot it on reflex. Hope is not a plan. The Inquisitor's voice is quiet. It is bait when the warp grows clever. They both look up. The falling thing slows again. There is no roar now. The second sun washes the hive in day as the object halts over the dead black river that threads Crownspire like a blade. It hovers a heartbeat. The river boils. Then the eastern macro stack, 13 kilometers of manufactoria, fed by rail lines and soot, suffers a failure no one noticed until now. A pressure cap fails on the primary promethium reservoir. The detonation throws a slab of ferrocrete the size of a cathedral into the sky, like a coin, and snaps a monorail spine in 2. The city's skin peels. A heat wave hits the nearest hab-blocks like a fist. The hovering thing moves. He moves. He is a man. That is the first disorienting fact. A man in a blue suit burned darker in places, red cape scorched black along the hem. He leaves a wake of bent air. Heat rivulets down his skin and evaporates before they can be sweat. His eyes are 2 pale, steady lights. He catches the falling hab-block from beneath, not as a man lifts a weight, but as a parent intercepts a child about to hit the floor. The impact shock ripples out, splits windows for kilometers. His arms lock. The track screams. He bears it, shoulders bowing, teeth set. The slab settles back into a survivable angle. People who were dead in every plan that existed a second ago are alive because he exists. He moves again. A second hab-block goes. He is already there. He seals a ruptured rail tank with his body and his breath. He cuts a new channel in the boiling river with the heel of his hand to send fire away from homes. He rises, eyes narrowed, looks up through the smoke, and sees the next threat before the city does. The orbital defense platform tramline, misaligned by the shock, will shear off a section of Crownspire if it completes its cycle. He is a blue flare climbing into the rip in the sky. Kade grips the railing. By the throne. Holt's fingers rest on the pommel of a blade no one else can see. Do not pray yet. The man reaches the tram line and hauls it into place, while the platform's rotation torque tries to throw him into the void. He absorbs the kinetic fury into the muscles of his back and shoulders, and then lets it go in a controlled exhale through clenched teeth, venting it as heat and motion into empty air. The platform resynchronizes. Red warning runes on the station's rim dim to amber. 1,000 gunners, who would have been crushed into paste in their bunkers, do not die. They do not know why. He drops like a falling tower and becomes gentle again at the last instant, setting a commuter line's broken spine onto a span of reinforced steel with a noise like a sigh. He is a contradiction the city is willing to accept. It is always ready to worship a contradiction if it saves their children. He stands in the boiling light and looks across a sea of faces. Some reach for him. Some make the sign of the eagle faster, as if to anchor him to the god they know, and not the one they fear he might be. He looks more tired than any idol. He looks like a man who has just done a day's work and will do another. He speaks. The sound carries without amplification. Stay away from the river. Upper habs evacuate west. I'll stabilize the stacks. His high Gothic has the clean edges of someone who learned it by listening to prayers. He does not ask permission. He moves. Kade's eyes shine wet. She blinks hard. "Patch me to him," she says. "Right now." The Vox officer shakes his head helplessly. "No transponder, he's not broadcasting." "He doesn't need our permission," Holt says. He studies the man's arc as he crosses the hive, a red blur against stormlight. He needs a context. The context arrives with the second sun's shadow. The wound in the sky thickens. It is not a tear, it is a mouth. From out of the seam come ships. Not ships, shapes. Cathedrals of steel with prows like altars and silvered idols chained to their flanks. They translate with belching storms of unreality that make augurs gnash, and the astropath choir throw up blood in their bowls. The augurs identify them in pieces. A warband flying the 8-spoked star. Black armor that drinks light. Hulls tattooed with oaths. Chaos. The word is not spoken in the command spire. It does not need to be. Warlord classes, Kade says. They came masked by the anomaly. Of course they did. Orders leave her mouth like bolts. Scramble Voidwing. Bring the city shields to full. I want the macro batteries hot 20 seconds ago. Too many for a surface siege, Holt says. They will open the skin and let hell in. Be ready to herd civilians away from breach points. We will lose those zones. We are not losing anything, Kade says. Not after this. I won't break the city after he just held it together. Holt's mouth tightens. Admiral, this is not about pride. It is about duty, she says. You perform yours. I will perform mine. On the river, the man in blue looks up and goes still in a way that reads as thought to anyone who has ever watched a soldier calculate. The first lance strike comes like a spear of dawn. It drives down into the Manufactoria stacks he just stabilized and lifts them from their foundations in a whiteout. He flies to meet it, hands up, palms flexed. He catches light. He bends the lance around Crownspire the way a blacksmith bends a wire with 2 tongs in his weight. The beam skirls past the hive and carves a trench 30 kilometers into the ash flats beyond, vitrifying sand. He is ringed in his own aurora now. He turns his head, and the aurora moves, and the lance follows his palm. He has found a new kind of lever. The warband does not pause to admire. Drop pods, like iron seeds, punch atmosphere. The first wave is brutally simple. World eaters and their cults. Murder in plate and leather. Chain weapons fizzing with teeth. Bolt shells thudding into ferrocrete. They hit the macro stack plateaus and the cathedral squares and begin to harvest fear. They kill like it is a language they speak and wish to teach. The man in blue lands in their path. He moves with steelworker precision. He breaks chain axes across his forearms and folds helms in his hands until the optics crack and the wearers go limp. He ducks a bolter volley, the round slamming into its cape and disintegrating with sparks, and steps through the curtain to put 3 traitors on the ground. Gently as he can, hard as he must, he uses the bodies to dam a choke point and keep the cultists from spilling into a hab tier. He is a floodgate that bleeds. He breathes out. The breath is cold and cuts a chainblade's motor stone dead with frost. He breathes in. Energy sizzles back into him through skin and suit, a low, steady thrum. Every time he chooses where not to hit, he loses ground and saves lives. Every time he chooses where to hit, he ends a kill zone and takes a new wound. He triages a war. In the Spire, Kade feeds him what she can. Shield timings, heavy gun arcs, which squares are lost, and which can be bought a little longer. She is a voice at the edge of a hurricane. He can hear her. He nods once in midair like a promise and flies where she points. Kade catches herself exhaling when he says, "Acknowledged," and hates that relief has become a vice. Holt watches him and measures ratios. He's not immune, he says, almost to himself. He converts. He burns fuel he has not named. Fuel? Kade says. Light, Holt says, meaning. Belief. It is all one thing where the warp is concerned. A champion in black plate marked with 8. Horns spiraled with gold. A blade that looks like a wound given steel. He is called Skall by the ones who live long enough to utter a name around him. He takes the stairs up the Cathedral of the 100 Martyrs 2 at a time, kicks the doors in, and makes an altar of the nave by mere presence. The man in blue feels him coming, the way a diurnal creature feels a storm front that will turn day into night. He goes to meet him. They meet beneath the nave's vaulted ribs, while incense burns in shattered censers, and stained glass paints the marble in saints' colors. Skall swings a blow that would snap a main mast. The man raises his arm and takes it on the bone. The demon blade does not glance. It bites. A line of red opens on skin that has ignored plasma. The cut smokes. Skall laughs. It is a big, joyless sound. "Oh," he says, savoring the word, "you are flesh." The man's fist takes him in the chest and sends him through a saint's mural. Stone becomes dust in a cone. Skall rolls, comes up like a dancer, skids back with his boots cutting grooves. He looks down. His breastplate is intact. The thing behind it is not entirely. He respects the man now. They trade all the things men have always traded. Distance, pain, mistakes. The demon blade drags across the man's ribs and leaves behind a cold that is not temperature. The man's knuckles find plates, edges, meat. He cuts his own palm on the demon edge and then uses that blood on Skall's face. Not because it will harm him, but because it blinds him for a heartbeat. And a heartbeat is all grace ever costs. Skall faints low and then, with the grace of a butcher, opens the blade like a second mouth. It does not cut this time. It whispers. The whisper goes in through the man's skin and rides his nerves and speaks in a voice he knows. You will fail them. Not now. Later, when the numbers go bad, and the child is beneath the rubble, and you must pick the gear factory or the orphanage. And you will pick the gear factory because that saves more. And you will watch one small life wink out because you chose a theory over a face. And the faces will stop being faces. And you will be a law. And you will be me. He staggers. It is not fear. It is the rightness of the arithmetic. Skall presses. The blade's whispers multiply, become a choir of plausible futures. The man scrapes his shoulder along the nave's pillar to interrupt nerves. He blinks hard, and the world snaps back into single focus. Stop, he says. And he means the future's momentum, not the blade, not the man. Skall smiles and brings the blade in an arc that will make an answer of its own. A bell rings. It is an old bell. It remembers names of saints no one pronounces correctly anymore. It rings because a woman in armor, the color of burned gold, has brought her hammer down on it as she charges, and because she is singing a song to the God she knows, and the people who are dying where she can see, and the man who is bleeding where she can help. Sisters of the Holy Order make a line behind her with bolters that speak in disciplined syllables. The nave fills with smoke that is sweeter than the promethium in it, because the hymn is threaded through. The man in blue steps into the hymn, like a river that will carry him the last few meters he needs. He takes Skall's wrist at the apex of the swing. There is a sticky, wrong cold there. He folds it downward with all the kindness he can find. Bones crack around the demon inside the metal. The blade hits stone. The man's other fist goes into Skall's helm and finds the seam. He does not crush. He opens. The helm peels. The face beneath is painted in oaths. The eyes are human and full of good humor despite everything. The man in blue sees that humor and almost likes him. He puts him down. The demon blade laughs on the floor in a voice like knives falling onto a plate. It repeats the man's doubts in his own voice. He kicks it into the choir stall and covers it with a pew. "Consecration!" the Sister Superior screams. The hymn swells. Wards etched in the marble flare. The whispering drops to manageable. Skall hacks blood onto the floor and grins up at his killer. "It will not last," he says, meaning the ward, the day, the man. "You have too much mercy for here." The man in blue doesn't answer. He binds Skall's arms with a chain torn from a censor's rack. He leaves him breathing. It is not mercy. It is proof to himself he can't still decide. On the spire, Holt watches the catechism of fate take shape and resists the urge to cross himself. He bleeds to spare, Holt says. "That is admirable and dangerous. If you have a better way to announce to 1 billion souls that the universe hasn't forgotten them," Kade says, "I'd be grateful to hear it." "I do," Holt says softly. "It involves not lying." Kade turns. "What do you mean?" Holt doesn't answer. He is listening to a quieter war. The astropath choir at the spire's base hums in low agony. Their bowl of black water shows not stars, but a mass of teeth. "Second wave," he says. A smarter enemy enters. The seam in the sky spasms. The ships slow their fire as if to watch. Something without weight, with only intent, slides through the wound and threads the city like smoke finding cracks. It has a shape if you are near it. It speaks in numbers to men who trust numbers. It speaks in miracles to those who crave them. It is very gentle. It calls itself a choice. It finds the man in blue as he flies into a burning transit spur to carry out 3 children whose hands are locked into one another's. It speaks in the voice of his mother, and in the voice of the first city he failed, and in the voice of the sun on his face. "Let me help. Let me show you the calculus if you allow me to carry the part you dislike. Let me take away the guilt of choosing, and you will choose perfectly because it will not feel like choosing. You are so close to perfect already." The last piece is acceptance, that freedom is a lovely word for waste. He sets the children down. He kneels and meets their eyes and gives them a story about fire and bravery that will harden into a myth that keeps one of them from joining a shrine cult at 15. He stands again. The world tilts, not because the ground shifted, but because the offer was precise. He does not answer. He goes to work. The thing tries again. It shows him a world where he took the deal. The hunger in the eyes of grateful men as they watch the trains run on time over the bones of those who asked the wrong questions. The peace that occurs when no one is allowed to be difficult. The quiet, perfect grief of the man who enforced it and has never had a friend. He flies higher. He burns brighter. The thing recoils from the heat of meaning that is not its own. It tries the old weapons, faces of the dead, the sound a city makes when it is ground against its own walls. The promise that one person spared is 10,000 condemned by delay. "Stop," he says for the second time. And now the word is a refusal of bargains. The thing shows him, with a lover's care, the exact point at which his mercy will get the most good men killed, and asks if he can live with himself afterwards. "No," he says, "I will live with them." It is not theology. It is a choice of tense. The thing becomes teeth, because kindness failed. It bites along his nerves. He seizes in midair, drops a meter, catches himself with a jerk that makes his vision go gray. He smells cinnamon and ice. Memory tries to dissolve into exhortation. The second sun flickers. On the cathedral roof, the sisters' hymn lifts. Below the spire, Kade's macro batteries find a ship's weak point and push a hole through it that spills bright guts into the night. In the choirs below, astropaths burn their eyes to keep a thought steady. You are not alone, because we are saying you are not alone. The man in blue hears it, not as sound, as a pressure, like hands on his back when you are too tired to stand, and someone who understands puts their shoulder under yours. He breathes. The breath is a white pillar. Frost traces the edges of the thing's presence, not because it fears the cold, but because the air takes shape around whatever a will declares. He gives it shape. He gives it edges. He gives it a place to be. The thing that wanted to be a concept is forced to be a creature, and creatures can be hurt. A figure drops through the second sun, like a candle falling through itself. Armor chased in gold. A face that might be handsome if you were not scared of men who wear their beauty like authority. He lands without sound. The air around him goes still. His eyes fix on the thing's outline with the cold intimacy of a duelist recognizing a weapon he murdered with yesterday and will murder with again tomorrow. Gray nights, Holt says, and for the first time there is something like relief in his voice. They send a librarian. The God Emperor is not looking away. The librarian lifts his blade and speaks a word that is both an old human sound and a sigil that lives in the bones of reality. The thing jerks like an insect pinned by a needle. "Hold it," the librarian says without looking at the man in blue. "I have it," the man says, and means the shape, not the creature. Together they pull. The world rejects the intruder like a body rejecting a splinter. It goes, not with a scream, but with a sound like a poorly soldered joint clicking into place under pressure. The air smells like ozone and frankincense. Everyone in range has the sudden, embarrassing urge to weep. "Thank you," the man says. The librarian nods once, as if they shared a shift. "More," he says, meaning more like this. And then he goes where he must, because the city is a board with nails that need to be hammered down one by one until the day is over. The warband adjusts. They are not fools. They send blades that whisper arithmetic, and preachers who make surrender sound like reason. And it does not work. Then they send something else. Men and women without a presence. Blanks. Their souls are doors nailed shut. Their proximity hits the man in blue the way a soundless drop in air pressure hits the inner ear. He lands too hard on a hab roof and cracks a rib, not because his body is weak, but because his sense of self stutters near the null, and the intent that holds him together falters. Kade sees him falter on a grainy rooftop feed and tastes acid fear. "Pull him out," she says to no one she can command. Holt puts a hand on her shoulder with sacrilegious familiarity. "He is not ours to move," he says. Yet, the blanks unleash weapons made of black stone that hum at the edge of hearing. The hum crawls over the man's teeth and sets up harmonics in his bones that make his hands forget to close. He goes to one knee. He breathes, and nothing warms. The second sun dimples. "Move," he tells his muscles. They obey, but slower. He fronts the blanks anyway. He cannot negotiate with absence. He can choose a place to stand. It is a small theology, but it holds a city. He charges the nearest null and takes the man in a shoulder throw that uses the building's edge as a fulcrum and the null's armor mass against itself. The null rolls cleanly, comes up without haste, and strikes without pride. The blackstone club in his hands leaves a welt across the man's jaw that does not fade as the others did. It remains like an accusation. "Fall," the null says, as if making an observation. "I can't," the man says. He doesn't mean physically. He means morally. He is stubborn in a way that looks like stupidity until it saves everyone. He plants his feet. He takes each blow as a tax owed to principle, and he pays it. He disarms too, breaks the weapon of a third with a grip that makes old Blackstone groan, and then steps into the vacuum where their killing aura is thin and takes a breath that feels like opening his eyes underwater and finding air there anyway. It is enough. He throws all the heat he can generate into the sky and burns through cloud into clean sunlight. The pain falls off him like insulation slag. He dives again, a spear that chooses its targets with the care of a surgeon and the authority of a judge who hates his job and does it perfectly anyway. The day becomes a fight between standards. The traitors try to turn it into a fight between numbers. The traitors do not win. They do not lose either. They retreat at sunset with the ugly discipline of professionals. The wound in the sky does not close. It waits. Crownspire holds. The cathedral square is ash and glass that night. The city breathes like a runner with a stitch. The sisters set up triage inside the nave. They lay down faith like gauze. They also use bandages. No one remarks on the hierarchy of efficacy. The man in blue sits on the cathedral steps with his cape over his knees like a blanket. He is not unmarked. He has lines across his ribs that are absent of sun, cold to the touch. He presses 2 fingers there and looks as if he is listening to his own house, settling in a winter wind. Admiral Kade approaches. Her boots leave prints in the ash. She carries a canteen and a data slate. She has not slept since 3 days ago. She will not sleep for 2 more. She offers him water. He takes it with both hands and drinks as if he has just remembered it exists. "Thank you," he says. "You did the work," Kade says. She sits. Her bones crackle. "I am Lysa Kade. I have the dubious honor of command here." He nods. He falters. The name sits wrong in this place, heavy with a story no one here knows. "I am called Kal-El," he says finally. "Some called me Clark. Here I am. Just me, Kal-El," Kade repeats, because saying a name makes it real in a chain of command. He looks at her data slate. "You're losing pressure on the west utility run," he says. "That explodes at midnight if the relief valve is still stuck." Kade blinks. "I have a team on it. They'll be glad for your confidence." "It's the steel," he says. "It has a noise when it's about to break." Kade wants to ask about the second son. She wants to ask about everything. She does not. She takes out the practical question like a knife. "Are you willing to take orders?" she asks. "From me. From anyone who knows this theater. I'm willing to help the people here live," he says. "Orders are one way to do that." She nods slow. "That will do." A shadow falls across them both. Not from the second son, but from a man who creates his own shadow with presence. Inquisitor Holt stops 2 steps below. He does not climb. He does not bow. He looks at the man, the way a surgeon looks at a promising tumor, aware of potential and necessary violence. "You wield power that defies our maps," Holt says. "You decline to be owned by the temptation that most of our heroes accept and call something else. That buys you a conversation, nothing more." The man in blue stands. He is taller than Holt by a hand's breadth. He makes that height look like responsibility, not threat. "Then let's have it," he says. Holt's gaze flicks to Kade. "You may leave us, Admiral." Kade doesn't move. "No," she says. Holt doesn't sigh or scowl. He recalculates. "Very well." He looks back to Kal-El. "This world is not a place that tolerates wild miracles. Our gods are utilitarian because they have to be. Survival, repetition, obedience. Mercy is a luxury. Hope is often a toxin. Everything you did today was useful, but your method," his mouth flattens, "if you continue to save without sanction, you endanger the order that keeps our billion alive between events like this. My method," Kal-El says, "is that I do not kill when I don't have to." He gestures to the cathedral. "If you can show me a calculus that says killing a man who is bound and beaten saves lives, real faces, not ratios, I will argue it honestly, but not because I need sanction." Holt's eyes narrow. "Ratios are real faces to me. That is the horror of this job." He taps his own chest. I will send 10,000 to die to save 1 billion. And I will sleep like a man in a trench, badly and forever. That is my pride and my penance. Do not mistake either for deviance, Kade says. He's on our side. Which side is that? Holt asks. The one where the city does not burn, Kade says. Holt nods. Good. Then hear this. You will come to the throne. The Emperor must decide whether you are a weapon, a miracle, or a threat. If he cannot, we will decide for him. Kal-El stands very still. The second son makes a halo on his shoulder that looks like a badge. I will not be a tyrant, he says. Holt's smile is a thin cut, not even a benevolent one. There is no such thing, Kal-El says. And for the first time since the seam opened, Kade hears weariness in his voice. There are only men who make themselves lonely and lie about why. Holt studies him and nods once, as if he's found the axis he was feeling for. We leave at dawn. They don't. They leave at false dawn, because the enemy won't let them have a real one. The gunship that lifts from Crownspire's spire bears the sigil of the Inquisition and the scuffs of 3 campaigns. Inside are Kade, Holt, a sister superior named Maria, whose hymn voice is a weapon and a comfort, 2 custodian mortals on loan from a temple that will not explain its generosity, 12 stormtroopers who believe they are already dead, a medici whose hands shake only when she drinks tea, and Kal-El, who sits by the hull and keeps one hand pressed to the line of cold across his ribs, like a man holding a teacup he does not want to spill. They go up and out through the second sun's sheen and into the thin places where the sky becomes book pages, the color of old blood. The navigator hums private blasphemies into a cage of golden wire to keep the route true. Mid-transit, something finds them. It looks like him. It wears no armor. It has no crest. Its suit is the same blue, but the cape is a darker red, almost brown, as if it has been dipped in old victories. Its eyes are gentle. That is what makes Maria shout a warning. She has never seen a gentle enemy. Do not engage, Holt says, because he does not know how to tell his men not to kill someone who smiles like a priest. He turns to Kal-El. It is for you. The mirror waits in vacuum with calm that is either kindness or contempt. When Kal-El steps out of the gunship's belly door and meets him in the lightless, soundless between, the rest of the ship goes quiet, in the way that people go quiet when they realize the play they paid to see is also about them. The mirror speaks with no breath. The Vox carries the thought to the gunship, whether anyone wanted it or not. Hello? It says. I am the shape you will become if you learn the right lessons. I am the Regent of the Red Sun. Kal-El drifts with boots planted on nothing. I won't. You already are, the Regent says, and shows him a city, not Aurelion Prime. A world where the trains run on time because people are not allowed to take too long to say goodbye. A world where crime is low because the definition of crime now includes being inconvenient. People are fed. People are safe. No one is free. No one is unhappy because the word is illegal. I would die first, Kal-El says. Die then, the Regent says. The word is not a threat. It is a permission. Leave them to men like your friend with the iron badge, who will do what you won't and be praised for it and hate themselves. Or live and learn. Rule. It does not matter how soft your hands are when you close them. Closed hands are closed hands. Kal-El does not answer. The silence is not surrender. It is the knowledge that arguments of this size are not won with lines. He moves. The mirror moves. They are slow, then fast, then blinding. They hit and rebound without friction to absorb the hit. They learn each other's preferences in a minute. Kal-El goes for joints to break leverage. The Regent goes for eyes, because eyes are the last thing you think you need until you don't have them. The Regent grows brighter as he fights, as if he feeds on the friction itself. He steals momentum and turns it into coherence. He is a machine that optimizes compassion out of the equation and calls the result peace. Kal-El remembers a farmer who taught him how to hold a newborn calf that wasn't ready to be born, and how to push and when to stop. He remembers a newsroom and a woman who cut questions like a blade and then put the blade away to hold someone who needed it. He remembers that the point of strength is not victory. It is service. He strikes with that. It looks like a straight punch. It is not. It is a refusal to use the angle that would blind. He loses the short exchange. He keeps the thing he will not trade. That compliance costs him blood that freezes into fragile ornaments and then drifts away like glass moths. The Regent smiles, bleeding. Optimization hates friction, he says. You are made of friction. The navigator screams the word no one should know. Outside, the Astronomicon flares, a steady light that dilates like an eye focusing on home. It is not a sign. Signs are what desperate people call it when physics is kind. This is a vector. The Regent flinches infinitesimally because his diet of stolen certainty cannot metabolize someone else's will made into a lighthouse. He backs away. He does not look defeated. He looks bored. "Reach your throne," he says. "We will talk again when you are tired." He goes. The ship breathes. The sister crosses herself, and then her lips move in a more personal prayer. Holt, who is not given to piety, lets his shoulders drop a fraction. Kade meets Kal-El at the door and touches his elbow, and thinks better of asking if he is all right. Terra is an argument made stone. Pageantry is the point. They come in low through layers of sky gilded by ship traffic. The palace is not beautiful. It is dense. It rises in nested cathedrals, and each one looks like a fist. The guards at the gate wear gold that is not ostentation, but armor. Their faces are bare. They do not smile. The Sisters of Silence attend like shadows in white. The null in their presence is a pressure change that makes the world taste like iron. Kal-El walks into it and does not flinch. He walks the way he walked across Crownspire, as if someone who is scared is watching him and will decide what courage is by what he does with his hands. They do not take him to the throne the way they take petitioners. There is no parade. There is no crowd. He walks through spaces meant to make men small and thinks about how many bodies are buried in the foundations and how honest it is to build a religion with weight. The audience is not an audience. It is a room whose dimensions cannot be measured. It cheats with perspective. It is a chair that is more machine than throne. It is a man who may not be alive and may be more alive than any other, whose face is hidden by gold and tubes and light. Kal-El kneels because anything else would be a lie. He does not speak. The answer speaks without words, not into his ears, but into the part of him that listens when there is nothing audible. The galaxy is an animal that eats hope, because hope tastes like protein and sugar. You carry a kind that is not to taste. For this, you are dangerous. Kal-El thinks of the Regent and Skall and the hymn, and Kade's cracked knuckles, and Holt's tired certainty. He does not think in words. He holds all those weights in his hands and waits for the scale to settle. The voice is many voices, all harmonized. It speaks in pictures because pictures are faster. It shows him 3 futures. In one, he leaves. He goes where the second sun took him from. He wakes in a world that is softer. His memory of this place fades like bruises fade on men who heal too fast and learn too little from pain. He becomes a story people tell that has a moral that flatters them. The galaxy here continues to eat hope, but no one as bright as he is, there to make the meal hurt the eater. In another, he stays and refuses to kneel. He becomes an agent of hope, unfettered. He saves lives. He breaks sieges. He defies the Inquisition when it tries to burn a village to stop a plague. The village lives and carries the plague on a pilgrim's back to 3 hives and a starport. Millions die. The Inquisition tries to kill him. Sometimes it almost does. The people love him. The institutions hate him. The wars multiply. He becomes a god in everything but honesty. Civil war blooms like a rash around his footprints. In the last, he kneels. He becomes a servant with a badge. He takes orders from men like Kade, and printers of ratios like Holt, and women like Maria, who know exactly what they're worshipping and do it anyway. He loses autonomy. He gains vector. He saves more people and hates himself some days for how he did it. He can carve boundaries. They will be obeyed because he will enforce them with the same heat he used to catch a falling tower. He will become the friendly face of a system that crushes as much as it preserves. The pictures end. The voice is not a voice again. It is a presence that demands deliberation by simply existing. Kal-El does not speak immediately. He has learned that decisions of this size are often only a choice between kinds of guilt. The question is what he can carry without becoming the thing he is fighting. He thinks of a boy in Crownspire who gripped his friend's hand too tightly when the slab was falling. He thinks of Skall's good humor. He thinks of Holt's honesty. He thinks of the Regent's boredom. He thinks of Kade's refusal to leave the steps. "I choose to stay," he says. The air does not shift. The throne does not glow. The room remains ugly and consecrated. "I will serve," Kal-El says. "On terms. I will not execute a child because a few ratios tell me to. I will not salt a field to deny the enemy food if I can sow it, and harvest it, and move the grain faster than they can take it. I will not lie about who I answer to. I answer to these people first, and I will not be used to terrorize the faithful into easier obedience. If those terms are unacceptable, I will accept your attempt to kill me. I will not accept being a tyrant for your convenience." Silence fills like water while a dam is being checked for cracks. Then, a pressure like a hand on a head, not to push it down, but to bless it. "Boundaries clause accepted," says the not voice, "with conditions. You will not defy strategic quarantine when the cost of mercy is planetary annihilation. You will triage publicly and speak the truth of why. You will accept censure when you fail, and not hide behind miracle. You will submit to judgment when mercy and survival cannot coexist, and the cost of choosing one has to be paid. You will not start civil war with your charisma." Kal-El bows his head. Understood. A figure steps forward from a shadow that might be a column and might be a stitched line in reality. He's not tall. He wears no gold. His eyes are human and blue and old. He carries a blade that is both tool and symbol. It is a custodian's sword, but it is also something else. A sanction. "Rise," the man says. And when Kal-El does, the sword touches his shoulder and then his other. It is not a knighting. This is not a world that carves knights from men. It is a weighing. The sword finds him acceptable. Kade waits in the hall. She is not allowed into rooms like this. She is allowed to stand outside them and pretend she does not want to know what happens. Holt stands too, arms folded, looking like a man willing to accept any outcome if it saves him from having to argue about it later. The doors open. Kal-El steps out. He's wearing the same suit, the same cape. Something is different. The chest emblem has changed. The stylized S with its ancestral curve is interwoven now with a small, careful aquila in the negative space, not devouring it, not overshadowing it, merely flying in its arcs. It looks like a compromise that someone insisted be prettier than compromises usually are. Maria breathes, "Ave," because she cannot help it. Kade grins like a criminal forgiven by a judge she respects. Holt's mouth almost makes a smile. He strangles it before it can embarrass him. "What do we call you?" Kade asks. "Kal-El," he says. "Or simply, a man. Titles can do too much." Holt steps in close, not as a friend, as a colleague. "We will test your boundaries," he says. "I counted on it," Kal-El says. They return to Aurelion Prime not to celebrate, but to work. The seam in the sky is smaller now. It shudders when he looks at it, as if the attention itself were pressure. Skall has been taken away to a place where the blade's whisper is quieter, and the sister's hymn is constant. He smiles at Maria when he sees her, and speaks no heresies. He dies well later, refusing a last defiance for a private prayer. She presides over it. It is a victory neither of them will count out loud. The warband regroups around a darker core. The Regent watches from a distance that is not outside the system, but only 2 decisions away at any moment. He sends envoys in the form of choices. Kal-El continues to say no, not with a moral, but with a pattern. Kade works in the places that do not take miracles. Convoy routes, food distribution math, macro gun maintenance cycles. The city does not love her. It respects her with the precise gratitude one has for a spine. Holt stays and becomes something like a friend, in the way 2 men who would kill each other in other circumstances sometimes are, when the work aligns. He gives Kal-El the decisions he hates most, and watches how he bleeds afterward. He does not take pleasure in it. He does not apologize. The first test of the boundaries comes a week later. A plague. It rides on moisture in the lower habs and blooms in lungs that cannot spare the swelling. Holt's ratios are clean. Quarantine the level. Burn the vents. 10,000 die to save 1 million. Kade signs the order with a hand that does not shake. Maria weeps and keeps singing. Kal-El evacuates 3,000 before the burn, with speed that looks like violation, and is, technically, disobedience. Holt meets him at the hab gate with a look that is not anger, but arithmetic with a face. "You broke procedure," Holt says. "You saved 1 million, Kal-El says. "You think that makes us even?" Holt says. He is tired. "I think it means we both kept our terms," Kal-El says. "I won't break a quarantine line again. The cost is too chaotic. But I will ask to set it an hour later, next time." Holt looks at him for a long time and then nods. "Ask." "We will say no, sometimes. I counted on it," Kal-El says again. And Holt has the uncharitable thought that it is easier to be saintly when you can move 1,000 people through a door before flame hits. And the more charitable thought that he has never seen anyone try so hard to keep promises in a place that eats promises for warmth. The Emperor does not speak to Kal-El again. He does not need to. The sanction lives in the little aquila on the man's chest, and the way the sister's hymn drops a half-tone when he walks in, and the way the blanks make him grit his teeth and move anyway. It lives in Kade's clipped acknowledgments, and Holt's yeses that sound like no, and no's that sound like love in this language. Word spreads in the way word always spreads. Faster than light when it is simple and good. Worlds whisper about a man in blue who catches lances and refuses to kill bound men, and stands next to inquisitors in public without becoming a sermon. Shrine worlds argue about whether he is a saint or a test. The Mechanicus writes equations about his energy conversion and files them in a drawer labeled heresy, then quotes them in the margins of a different paper with a different author to get parts approved for a reactor. Orc war bosses paint red capes on their banners and then declare it makes them faster. Eldar farseers say nothing and add a pebble to a dish when they mean a branch in the future has been cut. The Tau attempt an overture and are politely told to leave the sector or lose their marker lights. Necrons watch from holes in reality and make no comment. They never do. The Regent of the Red Sun makes his vow in private to no one. He promises that when the man in blue gets tired, he will be there to offer the easiest version of good. It is a king's promise. He intends to keep it. Skall's blade goes quiet in a vault. It remembers a man's hand that refused to crush, and it hates that it remembers like that. On Aurelion Prime, a boy who held his friend's hand too tightly comes to the cathedral steps at dawn and finds the man in blue sitting there with his cape around his shoulders like a blanket. He sits beside him. They do not speak. The city moves around them. The second sun is only light now, not a wound. Both of them watch the way the day makes the broken marble look like it was always meant to catch that color. Kal-El stands by sundown and goes where the next alarm calls. He is not the savior of the Imperium. He is a worker with good shoulders. He has a badge he did not ask for, and a boundary he wrote himself, and had to have approved like a tax. He is tired. He is glad. He is exactly where he chose to be. When he leaves Crownspire on patrol, he looks back and sees his symbol on a banner over the macro stack where the slab fell. The S and the Aquila are interlaced. It is not propaganda. It is a thank you from someone who knows banners do nothing, and made one anyway, because doing nothing would have felt like dying a little. He smiles without irony. He flies. Above, the wound in the sky heals on its own time, which is not human time. The galaxy continues to be an animal that eats hope. On this day, it got indigestion. On another, it will be hungry again. On those other days, a man in blue will show up with his stubborn, inefficient hands, and his little claws, and his ugly, honest compromises, and give the animal something harder to chew. He's not a god here. He is not alone either. That is the miracle worth keeping. The next morning begins with a rumor, and ends with a decision that scars a continent. Kal-El leaves Crownspire before dawn, with patrol orders that are mostly courtesy. There is nowhere in the flight plan his attention won't find first. Kade pretends to check his vector every 30 minutes, and then actually checks it every 10, because habit is a spine that holds her up when the world goes soft. Holt signs a requisition for more null-tuned batons, with the resigned irritation of a man who hates becoming right. The rumor is a prayer misquoted by a child. The child tells a sister in the transit tunnels that the blue man saved him, and that he said, "The Emperor wants you to be brave," and then adds that the Emperor also said, "The taxes will be lighter now." By mid-morning, 1,000 men in the ash markets are repeating the second half to each other, with the cautious joy of people who don't know when to laugh. By noon, 3 agitators who answer to a vox whisper that answers to no one are repeating it with capitalization. By evening, the Ash Belt, the ring of manufactoria towns that feed Crownspire with ore, grain, and men, refuses to send its scheduled trains. Kade takes the call in the command spire and feels her molars ache. "I didn't promise that," she says. "No," Holt says. "He did, apparently. Or someone wearing his voice. He doesn't look at Kal-El. He doesn't need to." The denial is already marching across the man's face. "I didn't," Kal-El says. "I told a boy to be brave. Inspirations accrue interest," Holt says. "And compound blame." Kade opens a map with the air of a woman unsheathing a blade. "The belt can't stay offline. We burn stores in 2 days. 3, and we'll see hunger in Crownspire that looks like a theology dispute." "I can talk to them," Kal-El says. Holt's eyes lift. "You will be the Emperor's face for a negotiation. You, with your claws. They'll read mercy as weakness and demand terms we cannot pay. They'll read honesty as a chance," Kal-El says. "I'm asking for a chance." Kade's jaw works. "I'll go with him. They trust uniforms more than miracles, or fear them more, which is useful." Holt thinks for a span of heartbeats long enough to cross a room. "Take a sister unit and 2 storm squads," he says. "No heavy armor. The message is parley, not pacification. If it turns, it won't," Kal-El says. "It might," Holt says, and presses his palm into the desk for a second, as if to leave a print there he can read later. They go at dusk. They take a gunship with paint scoured by dust storms and a broken icon on the hatch that no one fixes because superstition loves minor injuries. Maria comes because the Ash Belt speaks him better than law. She sits opposite Kal-El and studies him with sisterly suspicion that looks like affection if you have lived long enough among people who don't name their affections. The Ash Belt is not a place so much as a long, low argument with the horizon. Furnaces bloom at intervals like sunset fragments. Hab-blocks crouch behind them, square-shouldered. Rail lines thread everything like sutures. People stand along the rails with signs that do not ask for mercy. They ask for arithmetic. Kade meets the Belt Council in a depot with walls stained by a century of iron dust and hope. There are 6 of them, all older than the city thinks leadership should be. all with hands that remember tools. They let her speak. They let Kal-El stand where everyone can see him and wish he were more tired. "You are starving us," the eldest says, without preface and without anger. "Not now. Not yet. But you cut hours, and you cut rations, and you increase quotas and tell us the war demands sacrifices. We know sacrifice. We respect it. But when you ask for everything every month, you have made a mistake with your mathematics. You think the machine will keep running as long as we do. But the machine is us. We are not cogs. Cogs don't bury their children." Kade nods once. "We're bleeding too. Look at my city. We bled to keep it standing," says another. "We watched the blue man hold a tower in his hands. We watched a miracle. We want a miracle too, one that tastes like bread." "Miracles break budgets," Kade says dryly, because sarcasm is a skin she wears when she must admit she cares. Kal-El steps forward. He does not raise his voice. He's learned not to when people are already tired. "I can't change the ratio of grain to mouths overnight," he says. "But I can change the ratio of mouths to jobs. I can help reroute labor to repairs that will remove bottlenecks the planners missed. We can move more with the same hands. We can drop days off quotas not by fiat, but by throughput. I will come here and work with you. I will lift when you are out of lifting. I will make it undeniable if the demand is impossible." The eldest watches him like a farmer watching clouds, grateful for shade and afraid of hail. "You'll be here every month when the shipments are due," he says. "And when the war moves and the city is on fire, you will still come here to keep us from burning slower?" "No," Kal-El says, because he refuses to lie, even when mercy would make lying gentler. "When the city is on fire, I go to the fire. But I will train crews to do what I would have done here. I will build a habit that does not need me to stand in it every time. You have the hands. You need a lever. Let me be one for a while. Levers break," the eldest says. "Then we will make more," Kal-El says. Maria speaks into the quiet. "His clause is public," she says. "He put it on a banner. He will be held to it by men like me, who sing harder when men like him forget their own promises." The belt. Men look at her with grudging respect. They know a body that is paid. 3% reduction in quota days for 2 cycles, Kade says suddenly. "If we meet throughput marks, and if the macro guns stay green. After that, we review. The city will go hungry with you if this fails. That is a promise you can hate me for later." The eldest takes the terms like a hot pipe with thick gloves. He sets them down on the table and nods. "We will feed you," he says. "But understand, if you make us beg for bread our children have earned, we will not sing your hymns. We will sing our own." "I expect nothing else," Kade says. She reaches her hand across the table. He takes it. The grip is not friendly. It is correct. They leave with a signed slate and 1,000 eyes in their backs. Kal-El hears a boy shout, "Ave!" and an old woman hush him with a slap to the back of his head and a whispered prayer. He is loved and corrected in the same breath. It does him more good than praise. The Regent of the Red Sun watches from no distance at all. He watches from the space between a compromise and its first failure. He speaks to someone in armor the color of dried blood, with a voice that taught whole administrations how to pronounce love with an iron mask on. "Soon," he says, "he will fail them a little. That is enough. Then they will ask for a larger failure of someone else, someone with sharper tools. They will call me. Now?" the someone asks, buoyed by hunger. "Not yet," the Regent says, and his patience makes him beautiful and terrifying. A week later, the Plenarch of Virex throws a state funeral and a riot in the same hour. Virex is a shrine world gone sour. Too many pilgrims, not enough saints. The governor there built cathedrals for the cameras and forgot to build drains. When the rains came, they came into homes. A cholera wave rides the canals. Holt's office receives an appeal stamped with 20 seals and the quiet desperation of men who know they are late. "We have to burn the slums," the Virex adepts say in the briefing. "We cannot chase it. We must cauterize." Kal-El reads the numbers and closes his eyes. He flies. The slums of Virex look like a decision put off for a century and then given to fire. Kal-El goes through the roofs and the alleys and the canal bridges and carries people to staging squares until the squares look like a miracle and the slums look like a memory of wood. He finds a team of Medicae who stayed too long and moves them and their crates of saline and hope with careful hands that shake once when no one sees. He opens a sewer sluice by bending iron that remembers when it was ore. He sends fouled water into a tanker's line and clean water back along an old cistern route he mapped from the ground in a minute because he grew up on a farm. And you never forget the way water thinks. Holt's order to burn comes an hour later than any Inquisitors would. It is still early for mercy. Kal-El stands at the line where the flame will begin and watches the breeze. He turns to the sister commanding the torch unit and nods once. "Light it," he says. And then he stands there to take the first heat so the torch line doesn't flinch when the screaming starts. He holds the line while it burns and keeps it from jumping into the staging squares by shouldering falling beams and catching ember flocks before they can become another neighborhood. He stands in a halo that smells like salt and wood and resolve, and becomes a rumor about a saint who set a city on fire with his own hands to save it. Afterward, he sits with a man who lost everything and tells him that grief is not a test. You either pass or fail. It is an ocean, and the work is not drowning. It's the oldest thing he knows how to say. It helps less than a blanket and more than a hymn. He returns to Aurelion Prime with his suit rimed with ash and his throat raw. Holt is waiting with a glass of water and a sentence shaped like a rock in his pocket. "You did well," Holt says. And it only sounds like an indictment because he cannot make the word anything else. "I did," Kal-El says. And it only sounds like apology because he hates that he did. "You still moved the order," Holt says. "I won't say thank you. It's not that kind of work. But I see it." "I know," Kal-El says. "And I see you." He wipes soot off his jaw with the heel of his hand and winces when he presses a blackstone welt that refuses to become yesterday. Kade lingers in the doorway and pretends she doesn't want to say something kind. She fails. "We've got a rail jam at gate 4, she says, which in her dialect means I wish we had a better world to hand you. "Let's go," he says, which in his dialect means I will keep carrying it until my hands give out. Chaos declines to attack Aurelion Prime directly then, which is how you know they are not done. They have learned a new angle. A doctrine cannot be broken by direct force if it has the right shape. It must be turned by making the people who hold it ashamed of it. The next war does not come in drop pods. It arrives in sermons. Preachers appear in the belt markets and the shrine stairwells and the undercroft where men go to trade bad tools for worse. They wear ragged robes and soft eyes. They talk about efficiency with tears in their voices. They say, "Doesn't it hurt? You could end the hurt by choosing better leaders. Gentle ones. Like the red-cloaked man who will accept a small, hard thing now to prevent 1,000 small hurts later. Mercy scale poorly. You know this. Be brave." The sisters drive them out with hymns. Kal-El stands in one market while a preacher delivers his patter and listens through the words to the shape beneath and calls out without raising his voice. He is offering you a world where the first kind thing is free and every kind thing after costs your neighbor's teeth. The crowd laughs because it's a good line and because laughter is a way to back away from a decision without losing face. The preacher smiles because anything that makes choosing feel inconsequential is a win for his side, and slips away. The next escalation is not laughter. It is a machine. The Mechanicus on Graia Secundus built a lattice for mining beneath a dwarf star that throws out a light that is more red than red. It is a marvel. It bends local radiation to make space for delicate human work. The plans are stolen in the usual ways. A bribe, a lover, a confused servitor who prints an extra copy because it thought someone was kind. Blackstone is added to the lattice's joints by men who never call what they do sorcery. 2 weeks later, a red halo blooms over the ash belt. It is not natural. It hums at the edge of hearing. Kal-El looks up from a foundry floor where he is lifting a broken crane apart into pieces small enough to carry, and feels something take hold of him, like a winter. He drops the beam. It hits the ferrocrete with a sound that makes every man there flinch. He has never dropped anything heavy without meaning to. He hates the feeling like a child who suddenly cannot lift the bucket he lifted yesterday and thinks he has been punished. Up, he tells himself. He rises a meter and hangs there like a man who just remembered he tied his own boots together. Maria touches his shoulder. Her hand feels like an anchor he wants to keep. What is it? Bad weather, he says, and tries not to sound like he's joking when he isn't. Holt's voice is in his ear a second later. We have a power signature over Sector 9, blackstone components, null harmonics, and an artificial wavelength shift. They built you a sunset. Kade's voice follows, all steel. Guns. Pointless, Holt says. It's an umbrella, not a ship. Kill the pylons. 6 pylons anchor the lattice. They rise out of the ash belt like heresy disguised as engineering. Elegant, quiet, absolute. Their cores hum with a tune Kal-El can't stop hearing once he notices it. It crawls along his bones like cold. They're guarded by men whose souls taste like iron filings when a psyker looks at them. The blanks smile because they know what their presence does to him. He goes to the first pylon anyway, because pain does not write orders here. The air near the base tastes like penny copper and forgotten names. A blank steps out with the easy posture of a man who has never needed to be afraid because he makes everyone else afraid. He hefts a blackstone spear. It vibrates at a frequency Kal-El's teeth hate. Kal-El feints right, steps left, and takes the spear on his forearm with the deliberate stupidity of someone who knows how to be hurt and chooses it when the alternative is letting the opponent set the rhythm. The club wound sings, then screams. He uses the pain as a metronome. He moves on its beat. It keeps him honest. He takes the blank's knee with a short kick, and then, instead of breaking his neck, ties his arms behind him with a cable ripped from the pylon's maintenance panel. You can't keep doing this, the blank says, as if offering a friend advice. I can, Kal-El says, until I can't. Then we will find another lever. He leans into the pylon and pushes. It doesn't move. The blackstone anchor sings. He breathes and feels nothing climb into him. He is close enough to ordinary to train again. He does not win the first one. He breaks handholds he would have peeled in a second yesterday and earns blood under the nails. He uses friction burns on his palms to understand the pylon's texture in ways that raw force would have ignored. He steps and braces and levers. He listens to the hum and pushes against the micro-oscillations, the way a climber does when a rope vibrates at the wrong pitch. The pylon leans. It does not fall. He snarls, a sound he hates, and then stops snarling and breathes and changes his mind about what winning looks like. He doesn't push. He digs. His hands become tools. He goes beneath. The men on the lines behind him carry picks and crowbars and leave their fear on the surface because they needed their hands free. Maria's hymn changes key. The pitch sets Kal-El's heartbeat into a calmer groove than adrenaline was doing. The ground is not impressed. It opens anyway. They find a support strut. They cut it with old saws and sparks. The pylon shifts. He times the flex and then shoves with everything left. It goes. It hits the ground with a scream that makes sickness lurch in his stomach. The red light thins. 5 left. He breaks 3 before midnight with hands that feel like they belong to someone who lived a different life and didn't take care of them. Holt coordinates the stormtroopers and the sisters with crisp, ugly efficiency and loses 7 men to blanks in alleys because you cannot see a man who refuses to be seen. Kade keeps ammo moving and men fed, which matters as much as anything, which she pretends not to know, because if she admitted it, she'd cry. The 4th pylon is different. It is old, not built here, brought. The blackstone cap bears script that hurts to see. Kal-El reaches for it with the same instinct that taught him to touch a fence to see if it was live, and jerks his hand back hard. The air near it feels like an accusation, spoken in the voice of someone he loves. "Don't," Maria says. "I have to," he says. "You don't," she says, and plants her palm on his chest and holds him back. The gesture is pure human instinct, and useless against anything of scale. It works because he agrees to let it. That one is speaking in a tongue you can bleed out of your ears. We need a different tool. A Grey Knight answers, not because someone summoned him, but because the work from the Cathedral is still a cord in the air, and he has hands when the cord demands them. He puts his blade into the blackstone seam with a prayer that is also a proof. The seam becomes a wound. The pylon shivers. Kal-El takes it then, and topples it with a push that feels like good pain, the kind that tells you your body remembers how to be used. The fifth falls, because Kade calls in a favor from a Mechanicus Magos, who owes her for a shipment she diverted during a famine, and who likes the idea of solving an evil engineering problem with clean tools. He sends a micro-charge in a servo Skall that touches the base just so, and unseats a locking jaw someone clever etched there. The pylon sighs. Kal-El finishes the thought. The sixth is held by men who don't sing, who don't pray, who don't speak anything except the hum of their own null. There are 20. There are more than 20, but you only notice them when they come within a meter. They form a ring around the base and become a negative space Kal-El cannot name and hates like a sin he didn't commit. He goes in anyway. He stops 3 meters away because moving closer would be like walking into an argument with his own reflection. He tries words because words preserve dignity when a fight would only take it. "You can put the weapons down," he says. "Walk away. No one will touch you. You will touch us," one says. "With a doctrine." "You are not a doctrine," he says. "You're men with faces. You die the same way we do. Don't do it for someone else's proof." They don't look at each other, but something travels through them the way a flock turns. They come all at once, because that is the only way this makes sense, and there is no point in prettifying it with one-on-one chivalry. They hit him with clubs that make his bones argue with themselves, and with blows that land like the absence of something you needed. He blocks with his forearms until he can't feel his hands. He loses track of his feet and gets them back. He forgets for a second how to fly. He remembers how to fall. He uses the fall to take 2 down at the knees and a 3rd at the elbow. He refuses to make any of the injuries permanent. He refuses to count. He breaks the circle by not trying to break the circle. He steps into one man's space and stays there, shoulder to chest, stealing the geometry they trained for. He holds. He breathes through nausea. Maria's hymn threads through the null like a strand of color through cloth and tells him, "Move now." He moves. He finds the pylon with his back and uses it to stop a spear, and then to brace his push. It gives a little. He takes the little and banks it. He takes more. The ring collapses, not because he outfought it, but because it was supposed to be perfect, and he made it interact with a man who insisted on being human. The pylon falls. The red ring above ripples like heat off a road. It thins, then tears. The world floods back into him like air after being under too long and trying to pretend you weren't. He takes a breath and tastes oil and ash and psalm. He hates that he wants to weep. He doesn't. There's a train schedule to fix. The Regent of the Red Sun does not flinch. He expected this. He expected it to be hard. He is not here to win in a day. He is here to turn a habit. He tries again differently. The next attack is not a weapon. It is a procession. 100,000 pilgrims come to Crownspire down the Ash Road with banners stitched with 7 kinds of hope. They sing. They bring offerings. Bread, broken rings, letters they never sent. At their head walks a woman some call a living saint, and some call a very brave soldier who got lucky in public once. She carries a relic that is either a bone of a martyr or a well-crafted fake that helps people pray. It does not matter which. She shines when she looks at children. Kal-El stands on the steps as they come, because his job is to be seen, the way a lighthouse's job is to be boring until it isn't. Halfway up the road, the singing changes. The banners tilt, as if a wind no one else feels had touched them. The saint stops. She frowns. She doesn't know why the frown feels like betrayal. She smiles anyway because she will not fail at this. She looks up at Kal-El and feels an old, simple love rise in her throat like a song. She lifts the relic. The crowd roars. Something in the relic roars back. Kal-El feels the shape of it before he hears the sound. A familiar vector, a good turned to a lever. The Regent is not sending knives anymore. He is sending mirrors. Holt's vox is hot in his ear immediately. "Do nothing," he says. "If she declares a miracle in your name and you bow, it becomes a cult with your face. If you refuse and she falls, it becomes a martyr cult that hates you and us both." "I'm not a symbol to control," Kal-El says. "You are exactly a symbol," Holt says, "and a man. You must act like both, and neither. Welcome to my job." He doesn't go to the saint. He goes to the child nearest her and kneels so her father doesn't have to tilt his tired arms any farther. He lifts the little boy up to see over the adult's shoulders. He doesn't touch the relic. He doesn't bless anyone. He smiles at the saint. It is a real smile. She sees that, and something in her relaxes that was threatening to break and become a sermon. She lowers the relic to her chest and speaks words that have been said so many times by so many good women. They have grooves worn in them. "We honor strength with service," she says. "We honor the Emperor by feeding those his wars have made hungry. We honor miracles by not needing them for things our hands can do." The crowd takes this and turns it into a day of labor no official could have demanded. The pilgrims become a cleaning crew, a rebuilding crew, a grief crew. They leave offerings of bread on thresholds with notes that say simply, "For you." The road back is quieter and better. The Regent watches and files it under setbacks that taste like sugar. They teach him nothing except that his opponent is willing to give away his own legend and still be believed. He hates that. He respects it. He designs an attack that does not use belief at all. A month after the lattice comes down, a ship with a crest that says it belongs to no one anyone can name drifts into the upper atmosphere, trailing distress. It is an ugly ship, built for men who expect to die in it and plan to kill three things first. Its vox screams a code Kade hasn't heard since the Orfeo evacuation and hopes never to hear again. They call it Hecatomb Priority. It means, do not board, do not approach, do not even watch. It means, burn. The ship ignores orders. It bleeds down through the lanes and loops like a drunk. It clips a tram line and tosses men into the sky who do not land. It heads for the river, because magnetism is a habit too. Kade orders a lance strike without waiting for debate. Holt doesn't argue. Kal-El is already moving. He hits the hull like a thunderhead folds into itself and becomes nothing. He peels the skin back the way a farmer peels a tin roof after a storm to see if the rafters will hold. The inside smells like rust and last month's fear. He feels the hum before he sees the shapes. Cages with blackstone ribs. Inside, men, women, children. They are alive in the way a memory is alive. Present, begging, undeveloped. They carry a thing on their skin that is not quite disease and not quite idea. He stops moving. The ship groans with relief. The river inches closer. The lance battery above them holds its breath in a way that makes the entire spire go quiet. "Kade," he says. And even over vox, the city hears him say her name, like a man asking a friend to help him not fail. "Say it," Kade says. "She can order a planet to burn. She cannot order a man she respects to be less good. We can take them," he says. "We can contain this. I can move them to a quarantine field, and the sisters can." "We can't," Holt says, cutting in like a blade. "Listen to me. In the cages are wetware viruses. They ride meaning. They will turn every prayer into a key. They will bloom in the minds of the ones who love the Emperor most. They will turn this hive into a holy engine that worships annihilation while believing it is praising salvation. They will make good men burn their own houses and thank God for the chance. I have seen the aftermath. I am all that lived. Kal-El closes his eyes. His hand rests on the cage. A child inside puts his palm on the blackstone with the automatic trust children have for silhouettes that look like help. The barrier hums. The boy's hand leaves sweat. It will dry in a minute. That minute will live in Kal-El's bones until he dies. Say it, Kade says again. Her voice is sanded down to a workable thing. Kal-El says it. Fire. Kade fires. The lance touches the ship like a distant god's finger. The hull blossoms into clean white, and then nothing. The river boils for a heartbeat, and then remembers it is water. The smoke goes straight up like a confession. The city flinches. It forgives. It will not remember that it forgave this next week. Forgiveness is what people call it when they do not riot because they are tired. Kal-El hangs there and looks at the spot where a boy's hand was and breathes with care. Maria's hymn in his ear is not triumph. It is not comfort. It is a line stretched over a drop so you can stare down and not fall. Holt doesn't say thank you. He doesn't say sorry. He doesn't say anything. He drinks water with the greed of a man who knows he will need tears later and can't spare them now. Kade sets a hand on the console and stares at it as if she cannot identify which bones belong to which memory anymore. The Regent smiles in a room with no windows. He whispers to a page who is also a man who used to believe he was good. He is ours now. He will save us the trouble of making the hard choices. He will make them for us and call them mercy, performed by serious men. He believes it. He wants to believe it. It would make the world easier to rule. Kal-El ruins the plan by not letting the choice calcify into a habit. He goes to the cathedral after the burn and sits in the nave where Skall bled. He lets people hate him in whispers that die when they recognize his ears have made their whispers a gift. He speaks at the end of Vespers, not from the altar, but from the steps, because he refuses to tower. I ordered fire, he says. I would have taken them if I could. I could not. I will keep that boy's hand on mine and let it guide me to make different choices when the world gives me different facts. If you must hate me for the ones I made today, I understand. Hate me in a way that still lets you help your neighbor carry water tomorrow. Holt hears this and has the sacrilegious thought that he would like to be buried near this man, not because their doctrines ever perfectly matched, but because the soil between them would be good for crops. News of the Hecatomb burn goes to Terra. The rooms where truth is measured take it in, weigh it. Add it to a ledger that has titles like morality and numbers like pressure ratios. The Emperor does not speak. He does not need to. The sanction on Kal-El's chest does not throb. It merely continues to exist, which is how duty speaks in a world where miracles are rationed. The next campaign is away from Aurelion Prime. War is a tide, and the tide pulls. Kade wants to chain him to Crownspire like a clever governor ties a river to a wheel. Duty pulls harder. Holt hands him a slate with coordinates to Varan's gate, a fortress moon that guards a trade artery fat with food and thinner with escorts than it should be. The Regent is there by rumor and by math. Of course he is. It's where you go if you want to intercept, not bullets, but habits. Varan's gate is a hollow sphere with teeth. It opens like an iris to let ships through and closes on them if their numbers do not sing the right tune. It is held by a chapter whose name has been lost in an honorable purge and replaced by a title that is a work, the Gatewatch. They are tired and devout, and not very imaginative, which is perfect for a job like this until the day the job becomes something else. The Regent makes sure it becomes something else. He sends a convoy that looks like food and is, mostly. He laces it with men whose minds hold a seed. Not a virus, not a demon, a syllogism. It says, if your job is to protect lives, and opening the gate without forcing these ships to wait saves lives, then the law that demands delay is wrong. Protect lives. Break the law. It's a beautiful thought. It kills worlds when adopted as doctrine by men with guns. Kal-El arrives into an argument frozen in time by distance. The Gatewatch captain, a man whose name is an oath, and whose voice is 2 grades quieter than you think it will be, stands in the command pulpit and watches ships back up in a line like penitent men outside a confessional. His chaplain argues that delay is a sacrament. His first officer argues that delay is murder when the ships carry milk. Both are right. Neither can be praised in a way that makes the other stop being right. Kal-El lands on the pulpit because subtlety is a suit he wears poorly when the room is already on fire from words. He listens for 5 minutes without interrupting, and then says, "Open the gate in 30-second pulses and escort the milk ships through with your fastest boats. Search the ones that look like mansions. Stand ready to kill what runs. It is not poetry. It is clean. It is not mercy. It is discipline that makes mercy possible." The first pulse works. The second almost worsens into a massacre. The 5th ship is a murder disguised as piety. It opens its belly and spills out vespers and knives. The Gatewatch fire. Kal-El moves. He is slower than he wants to be because the Regent arranged the angle of the star so its light is lazy. He makes up for it by being very accurate where accuracy matters. He snaps a cable here. He throws a chunk of debris there. He puts a hand in front of a missile and lets it detonate against his palm, and pretends he doesn't notice the spiderweb cracks that race up his forearm in reply. Holt's stormtroopers board like an argument carried to its conclusion, efficiently, without flourishes, and at cost. They hold the gate because they refuse to be clever all the way to stupidity. They hold it because Kal-El says, "Stop," twice, once to a brace that is about to snap, and once to a man about to shoot a woman in the back because she looked like a sermon he hated. They hold it because the Regent underestimates what can be done with fairness, practiced at speed. He does not make that mistake again. He sends himself. The Regent comes under a white flag that looks like a sigh given fabric. He brings no army. He brings a question and a man in chains. The man in chains is Holt. He took him at Varan's gate by making the choice too neat. Holt went aboard a ship to stop a logic engine from seeding itself into the Vox network. He did so alone, because burden carried alone is his vanity. The Regent was waiting. He offered Holt a truth. If you do not die here, the equation spreads. Holt did the arithmetic on himself and turned the gun inward. The Regent took the shot from his hand and said, "No, you will live. You will be exchanged for a man who cannot be bought." That is how we purchase bargains in this era. Kal-El meets the Regent outside Crownspire with Kade at his shoulder, and Maria one step back and to the left. The air around the Regent smells like clean paper and a new law. He smiles without showing teeth. He says, "Trade," as if they are in a market and not a theater. "What do you ask?" Kal-El says. "Only what you are already tempted to give," the Regent says. "I want one protocol change. Nothing violent, nothing cruel. A simple thing. Emergency powers to be extended to your office in all theaters where your emblem has been posted. For efficiency, for clarity, for the children." Kade laughs. It's loud and ugly and perfect. "No," she says. "It would save lives," the Regent says mildly. "Yours. It would cost something more expensive than mine," Kade says. His doctrine is effective precisely because he has to argue with mine. Holt lifts his head. His face is a map of something that was frightening and didn't get to finish. "Don't," he says to Kal-El, because he reads a man for a living and sees the want. Imagine how clean it would be to not have to call Holt or Kade for permission to break a wall to save someone bleeding on the other side. Imagine a world where he doesn't need to say, Please. Kal-El looks at the Regent's face and does not see a villain. He sees a man with a garden that only grows one crop. Solution. He speaks to him as if they had a table and 2 mugs and an evening without knives in it. I won't take your bargain, he says, not because I don't love efficiency, but because I love argument. It keeps me from becoming your face. The Regent's eyes are sorrowful in a way that would disarm a better liar. Compassion that rejects the tools that make it scale is pride in kindness, he says. You will come to me when the ratios choke you. I will wait. Keep waiting, Kade says. We have trains to run. The exchange is not theater. It is an exchange. Holt comes to them with steps he keeps steady by force. The man who shackled him gives him a long look that reads as pity, a word Holt has never wanted and will never accept. The Regent goes with empty hands and leaves one behind in the minds of 1,000 men who watched him be reasonable. That night, Holt sits with Kal-El on the cathedral steps, because apparently that is where men who cannot confess still go to look like they're not doing it alone. The city is quiet, in the way cities are when they have decided to be good for a night. Holt speaks with the undersides of sentences visible. I tried to kill myself, he says, because he won't baptize it with euphemisms. I know, Kal-El says. He told me. I did it for the city, Holt says. That's what I told myself. It was also ease. It was lazier than coming back and arguing for the rest of my life. I'm not sure what to do with that truth. Carry it, Kal-El says, like we carry everything else. It will make me worse at this, Holt says, and maybe better. Both, Kal-El says, and means it in the way that acknowledges how often both is the only honest answer. He looks up at the banner over the macro stack. The interlaced sigil moves in the night wind like a throat swallowing. He wonders if there will be a day he has to pull it down himself because it has become a flag for something he doesn't believe in anymore. He hopes there won't be. He keeps his hands ready anyway. The galaxy notices all of this with the indifference of a beast watching a bonfire in a field. Some parts of it care. A farseer with hair the color of fatigue breathes out and moves a pebble from one bowl to another and refuses to tell her students why. A Tau watercast envoy writes 3 drafts of a letter of invitation to a discourse and burns all of them because the tone is wrong. An orc warboss named Gorgut paints a cape on his back with blood and announces he is now Boss Redfast. He dies an hour later when his own knob trips over the cape and a tank crushes them both. A Necron shard lifts its head in a vault and remembers a son it devoured with a taste like metal and a man who tasted like the same and goes back to not dreaming. On Aurelion Prime, a child grows into a man who runs Gate 4 without needing to ask Kade how to fix a jam. He tells his crew, "It's our wheel," and they do not know that he is quoting a promise made by a man in blue to miners in the belt. He dies at 50 in his bed. It is a rare miracle. No one notices except the men who worked for him and drink to him without toasts, because real toasts are in the work tomorrow. Skall's blade lies in a vault that hums with holy math. It dreams of faces. It dreams of the man who refused to crush. It learns nothing. It only wants. The red lattice never returns to the belt. It pops up elsewhere in lesser forms. A rusted sun here, a hum there. Each time there are more men willing to put their backs under a beam and push with Kal-El, not because they love him, but because he taught them in an afternoon how to lever. Kal-El goes to 100 fires and 1,000 arguments. He learns to love the ones he loses in the right way, without self-pity, but with memory. He breaks his claws once, on a day when Holt is wrong, and 3 hours too late, and a village is already carrying its plague to a pilgrimage fair. He stops them by force. He tells the Emperor's clerks first. He asks for censure. He receives it, public and ugly. He keeps going. Maria sings the censure day louder than she sings victories. That is her doctrine. It is better than Holt's. It is better than his. He fights the Regent again, not with fists, with a protocol. The Regent proposes a relief dictate that would allow Kal-El to requisition 3 worlds' labor to feed 2. Kal-El argues in public with Holt and Kade at a table that looks like a trial, because it is. They write a different dictate that makes requisitions a vote among governors under penalty of oath and binds the decision to bishoprics that can say no. It is messy. It saves more faces than it kills. It offends every elegant mind in the room. It stands. He fights Skall's master once, in a ruin of stone that remembers saints. The master wields a spear whose head is a knot of blackstone pieces braided around a hole. He calls it a mouth. He puts it through Kal-El's side and eats something that is not meat. Kal-El bleeds light that looks ugly. He drops to one knee and tastes the old fear. Not of pain, of becoming less in a way that feels like going to sleep in a warm room and never caring that morning happened. He stands anyway. He breaks the spear. The master laughs. "You will make a very good saint when you give up," he says. He dies 30 seconds later because a sister with dirt on her armor does not agree. On a day like any other, Kal-El flies high above Aurelion Prime and sees not a single fire from horizon to horizon. He cannot remember the last time that happened. He comes down and walks the belt without being asked. He helps a boy fix a bearing with a piece of wire and a story about how men lie to machines when they mean to fix them. Gentle lies, useful ones. The boy laughs. He will die in a mine riot in 20 years, and his son will remember this story and use it to convince a militia to put their guns down. Kal-El won't know. He doesn't need to. Not everything good requires witnesses. At night he stands on the cathedral roof. The statue of the emperor on the nave edge is not beautiful. It is heavy. It is honest. Maria comes and stands beside him in silence, and then, after a time, says, "Do you miss your first son?" "Yes," he says. "Do you hate this one?" she asks. "No," he says. "It is hard. So am I." "Good," she says, and leaves. Because you don't gild an answer like that with friendship. You just go to bed and get up early. The Regent of the Red Sun makes no final move. He has none. He understands now what the Emperor understood before the throne refused to let him die. There are no final moves, only longer games. He stays close. He speaks in budgets and loves arguments because he thinks he will win them when everyone is too tired to notice that framing choices is a kind of violence. He is wrong in the way that makes the work worth doing. He underestimates how contagious one stubborn clause can be when practiced by 100 hands. On Terra, a boy with a broom in a hall where no dust is allowed hears a story about a man in blue who told the Emperor no and lived. He smiles and does not tell anyone because he knows what can get a boy killed. He grows up to polish the boots of a custodian who will one day nod to Kal-El in a corridor at a convenient moment. He will be the hinge that makes a decision swing the right way. He will never know. Kal-El dreams occasionally. He dreams of home and of a farm that is not this world's, and of a man whose doctrine was 3 phrases long. Be kind. Be brave. Be useful. He wakes and repeats them without needing to add the footnotes he's learned. He wears his emblem with the Aquila nested in it until the red threads Kade wove there with her own hands need replacing. He asks a belt seamstress to mend it. She charges him a day moving grain and does not say thank you. He likes her. He carries the burn he ordered like a coin in his pocket he refuses to spend because he hates how it feels but will not throw away. He argues with Holt until they both bleed from the mouth, and then they get up and go to work. As if the argument was a spar, and the work a war neither of them minds losing to. He leaves Crownspire sometimes, and the city hates it. The way someone hates a lover who goes to work they understand, and cannot stop. He comes back. He always comes back. Not because the Emperor commands it. Not because Holt needs him. Not because the Regent is waiting to win when he's away. He comes back because he promised a boy on a macro stack that he would take care of the part of the world that falls on children first. At the end of a long year, the seam in the sky seals with a sound like a book being closed. No one hears it. Everyone is sleeping. The next morning is just a day. Men in the belt eat bread and work in the heat and speak less softly to their daughters about what they can become. A sister teaches a girl with shy eyes to load a magazine without looking because there is no virtue in being slow when quickness can save a friend. An inquisitor writes a memo that will prevent a purge because he hates the feeling of certain kinds of grief more than he hates the paperwork a reprieve will cost him. Kal-El wakes up in the hour before dawn. He flies out over the river. He stands in the air over the ash belt and lets the first light of a hard sun find his face. It is not the sun he loved first. It is the sun he serves. He looks back toward the city. The banner with the interlaced sigils moves. It is repaired again. It has been torn and mended so often it is more thread than original cloth. He thinks that is a good thing. He thinks that is the point. He smiles. Far away, the Regent watches a different dawn and sharpens an argument that could break a lesser man. He will use it soon. He will fail. He will try again. He will be interesting forever. On his way back to work, Kal-El descends over the macro stack where a slab fell a lifetime ago and lands on the same terrace. A boy is there who is not a boy anymore. A man in a supervisor's vest with a scar across his cheek from a conveyor mishap. He looks up from his clipboard and grins, like a man who is not surprised by the miraculous sight he has earned 1,000 times. "Morning," he says. "Morning," Kal-El says. "You still lifting?" the man asks. "Always," Kal-El says, and they both laugh at how close to a prayer that sentence sounds. He puts his hands on steel. He feels its noise. He listens to the city like a locksmith listens to a lock. He says very gently, to no one and to everyone, "Stop." And what he means this time is not a beam or a fire or an enemy. He means, stop pretending this is someone else's world to hold. A million hands move, a hard sun climbs, a doctrine breathes, and somewhere deep, where men make vows that matter, the galaxy, which is an animal that eats hope, pauses for a heartbeat to chew. It does not like the taste. It eats anyway. It has to. That is its nature. He is not here to change nature. He is here to keep promises. He has the shoulders for it. He is not alone. That is enough.